personnel, 1 student issue, and the superintendent's evaluation. Is there anything else, Dr. Need, that I'm missing? Okay, thank you. To ask everybody to stand for the pledge, then a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance. Roll call, please, Terry.
Mr. Clauser. Mrs. Cooper. Here. Mr. Faulkner. Dr. Faulkner.
Here.
Dr. Green.
Here.
Mrs. Heater.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Reichert. Here. Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Brookhart.
Here. 1.3 minutes, May 8, 2023 board meeting. The board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from the May 8, 2023 board meeting as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Richard? Second, Durrell. Any comments, questions? Terry?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert. Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 2.1, reports. Finance and Budget Committee, Mr. Vognetz.
We did not have a meeting in June. We decided that we didn't need one with the budget being preliminary approved. I think we are looking at July or August for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Academic Affairs, Ms. Heater.
I was not able to attend the last meeting, but I know the mental health task followed. And I'm not sure, Molly, you said about not having anything for this week. And I know you have a lot of heavy meetings coming up, so I don't know if we necessarily have to have a meeting, but we could
Yeah,
talk
I
about
think
that later.
we can certainly talk, but I think we could go without in June. We're working on all things that could be prepared for July and August.
Okay.
And we did spend a considerable time at the last meeting talking about the strategic plan that we are going to address in the superintendent's report
Okay,
today.
perfect.
Buildings and Grounds Committee, Mr. Reichert.
There's a couple things just to mention that was brought up before the last meeting, but the primary elementary school playground project is underway. They're going to take out the padding and put in playground mulch. Second thing was the track will be power washed and restriped this summer, date to be determined. Working on a middle school cafeteria roof extension. That'll be back in the back so they can get in and out of the freezer without getting all wet. Middle school floor painting in the downstairs hallway will be completed this summer. We'll be discussing sound systems updates at the middle school at the next Building and Grounds Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reichert. Athletics and Extracurricular Activities Committee, Mrs. Cooper.
We had our meeting on the 6th. The next meeting is going to be July 6th. We discussed the DASD Athletics Hall of Fame. We also talked about the fall assistant coaches. We discussed visiting Bloom to see the Daktronics scoreboard. That date is due to be determined. We also discussed the event security. We have 13 girls interested in female wrestling. We talked about cheerleaders and track repairs. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Health and Wellness Committee, Dr. Green.
So we had the inaugural meeting of the Health and Wellness Committee. Dr. Faulkner joined me on that committee, and we had the pleasure of actually hearing the report from the Mental Health Task Force. We devoted the entire hour and a half or so to the results of their report, and there are a lot of really amazing things. They're going to present a bit to the board as a whole today in a shorter, more condensed format, which I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of amazing recommendations in there, and I know Dr. Need has gone through it and started to think about the ones that should be implemented, the ones that should be thought about, and the ones for the future in order to improve the mental health of our children in this district. And I'm hoping in the near future that we'll see some concrete actions by the board to show our commitment to the report that's been brought back to us by the Mental Health Task Force. And I'm hoping the community is pleasantly surprised and pleased by the actions that I think the board will take.
Thank you. Health insurance?
That'll sort of come to a close as we are winding up negotiations with both the support staff and the teachers.
Columbia Montour Votech, Mr. Clauser is not here. Anybody have anything to offer on Columbia Montour Votech? So I don't forget later on, I would like to know our enrollment numbers for 9th grade, if we could get those at some point, because I remember asking last year, we were down to 18 from a normal of about 35.
So just to answer that briefly, our enrollment numbers are slightly down with actually, what would be next year's 10th and 11th graders. So the folks that just finished 9th and 10th, we had a few students at each of those grade levels come back to us, and we'll look at that enrollment report. And we were currently only around 13 students that had completed all of their paperwork to go of our current 8th grade class, but I'll update those numbers. They still have some time to complete that work. But certainly we'll keep the board updated to see where we're at there. There is also currently, the principal of the VOTEC is currently on a leave as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. CSIU, Dr. Faulkner.
Hey, yeah, I was officially appointed to the CSIU board by the board at the last meeting. At that meeting, one of the bigger highlights I think that was discussed was Project Aware Impact. Dr. Need is well aware of this. Basically, the IU has gotten a multi-million-dollar SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration grant, to provide a wide range of supports and services, including professional development opportunities for teachers, which Dr. Need has already sort of advertised and taken advantage of some of those, offering free trainings for teachers on a wide range of mental health and resiliency topics, as well as partnering with community resources, county mental health, to try to, I mean, in a nutshell, revamp the way that we approach mental health and resiliency for all of the kids in the Susquehanna Valley, Danville being one of those districts that falls under the scope of that grant.
One of the trainings that they're offering for free this summer is called Mental Health First Aid. So similar to the attention that like Red Cross CPR training would have nationwide, this is a training that's just for regular community members, but would be great for educators, coaches, parents, that is just sort of signs that someone might need more support, things you can say in a crisis, how you could get someone the help that you need. So I have shared that throughout our district with staff members, and we have a lot of staff members attending that in a variety of roles. So I've even asked our building secretaries to attend this summer because they get a lot of students who come to the office in need. But I did share that out with all parents in the community as well, because I know a lot of us wear other hats in the community, like we're a soccer coach or a band mom or whatever the case might be, and I've also gotten a good response from just community members in the Danville School District that are attending that. So IU actually was like, I guess you shared this a lot. So we're going to have a big Danville contingency.
Yeah.
We're down to the ITC.
Nothing tonight, Wayne.
Okay. Head Start. Daryl?
On Head Start, we Sandy and I sat through an extensive interview with a couple ladies from the department from the federal, and they were quite entertaining. They asked a lot of questions. We threw them out their answers, and they got confused, and we caught back up, and we were all on the same page. And then I went to a Head Start meeting, and I walked in, and there she sat. Now I see who I was really talking to on the other end. And so we had a good conversation about that. And we had to give them a lot of feedback of why the Head Start does, how it does, why it does, who's involved, who isn't, how much information is brought. And I hope they were very impressed for the Head Start program, so we get a good rating from it, so we can get support. We'll find out soon, right? 30 to 120 days it was. So we have to sit tight for a little while to get that results of how that turned out. You know how it goes. Yeah. And Sandy was a great help. He sat there and answered questions. I just saw, okay, you go ahead and do that one. He was great. Oh, you're welcome.
Happy to do it.
Yep, it was interesting, wasn't it?
It was very interesting.
The CS Trust, I have nothing to add. I pass things on to the administration. Mr. Sokolowski will be joining, I believe, as our third rep now that he's joined us as our business manager. Welcome. Any questions on any of the reports that we just heard? Any further comment at this point? You can discuss these things now, or at the end we get into board concerns and discussions. We can do it at that point as well. We're okay at this point? All right, let's move forward with the superintendent's report. Molly, you're up.
Thank you. Great. You'll first see our enrollment numbers, and so you will see here in the district that those have stayed pretty consistent. That 9th and 10th grade, so these are all the grades that these students just completed. So those are like 177 students that would have just finished kindergarten at the primary school. Our numbers within district are literally just maybe like one off where they were a month ago, very tight. At Votech, there is a drop of some students in both 9th and 10th grade who came back to the district. On the next screen, you'll see our public school, our non-public enrollment report. Those numbers you can see from February through June. One number that looks like it more drastically changed is just that the February report did not include St. Cyril's, so that's why there's a jump up. But otherwise, you see pretty consistent numbers in all of those categories. We have a variety of updates today, so bear with us. The end of the year brings lots of exciting information and news. Last month, we talked to you about the PCCD grant. This is a grant that the state is offering where you can get funding that has to be directed very specifically to school safety and also to mental health. But there's a lot of very clear guidance about how that money has to be used. You have to have certain safety measures in place before you could move money into what they'd call like the next tier. So we shared that this was a possibility. If you look at the next screen, you'll see that we were awarded approximately $270,000 from the PCCD grant. So some things that will cover is it will cover 2 years of a mental health counselor from the CMSU. We did have that person in place this year, and it will also cover her for next year. It will cover at least 1 year of a school police officer. The initial grant, when it came in, looked like we could spend money this year and next year. With this year is essentially over. It now looks like we'll be able to extend for 2 years, so it should cover 2 years of that school police officer. So we have advertised for that position. Our hope would be to have someone here on this campus with the primary school and the high school, our other school police officer at the middle school, and then our new school police officer at Liberty Valley, so every campus would have a school police officer there. This grant covers the second step curriculum for our K through 5 students. This is an SEL curriculum that our mental health task force is recommending. This would be considered a tier 1 initiative, something we can use with all of our students. So this grant will cover the cost of that. It will also cover the cost of SEL curriculum leads. So similar to how we have curriculum leads in ELA and math and science, this would allow us to do the same at the elementary level for SEL. And then you'll see some safety measures that we need to sort of check those safety boxes. So excited and have already started advertising and putting in purchases under that grant. Next, we're going to do a quick update on our budget so that we passed the preliminary budget in May. Today, the final approval of the budget is on the board agenda, and we have a slight change to our revenue to just share. So if you go to the next screen, Jeff, and I will turn things over to Mr. Moser, who's going to speak about our budget and also staffing numbers.
Yeah, so where we were at in terms of a budget with the preliminary budget last month was an overall deficit of $693,947. But what we are now at with what's before you tonight to be voted upon, thankfully Mr. Sokolowski on board now was able to get to the bottom of a pretty important topic. There is an increased amount of revenue of about $130,000 in property taxes, and that's based upon the assessment values that have to go into place because we are a multi-county district. So those are not any kind of increase in taxes. It is literally based upon assessments that get kind of rebalanced every year, so it changes those rates a little bit. So that actually, we were able to project an additional $130,000 in revenue. So what you see before you tonight in the final budget here is a deficit of $556,179. I think it's important to point out that the current fiscal budget that we're working under is about a $2.2 million deficit that we have strategically been able to reduce the structural deficit by about 67% in that 1 year span. So a lot of hard work by a lot of people that pitched in and got us to there, and you know we're now at that spot right now. Go to the next slide, please. Importantly, to think about, because it is about 70%, you know, anywhere from 60 to 70% of an overall budget in public schools, depending upon where you are your personnel costs. And so what we're looking at are professional staffing projections for the 23-24 school year. And we're going to look at it in the context of a state average, state averages going not only against those state averages, but looking at where we're at the beginning of 22-23 and where we project ourselves to be at the beginning of 23-24. First of all, the first slide you see here is pupil management ratios in PA. So these would be administrative or supervisory positions. And what you're going to see in terms of a ratio is the number of students per supervisory position or administrative position. I think this is important to understand too, as we move forward, especially tonight in one of the agenda items. So if we can go to the next slide, please. You'll see first the state average comparisons. There's really 3 different comparisons that PSBA uses that you can put yourself up against in terms of the numbers. Now, these are not recommendations. These are state averages. But those 3 types are just total enrollment numbers. So the size of the school. Now, that can, you know, same size schools can be drastically different from one area to another. There are obviously schools in the southeastern part of the state that have the same number of students as us. They are drastically different schools in terms of other factors. So you have the number of students, but then you also have an aid ratio range. Essentially what aid ratio range comes down to is the wealth of a district, if you will. So it takes into account the rate of property tax revenues that is brought in, along with personal income revenues that are brought in that local district's parameters. And then you see community type, which really comes down to urban, suburban, ex-urban, and rural. And you see, obviously, the aid ratio range that has the lowest in terms of the state average comparisons, because they are typically taken into account. Those wealthier school districts that have a high source of revenue are able to afford more personnel without, you know, without necessarily increasing, or some districts that kind of go for the Act 1 index every single year without really much question or debate. What you see, and you see ours, we have just under 2,160 students. This is the reason why there is an asterisk, is because this is for projections for next year. So there are 2 numbers, truthfully, that we don't know for sure yet, and that would be kindergartners and incoming 9th graders because of VOTEC, because of going to VOTEC. Now, there could be slight variations to all of the other numbers in between. Students move in, students move out, those types of things. But essentially, we're in that range. So we have, in our district, supervisory positions or management positions, we currently have 12. Our pupil to management ratio number is just under 180. So if you look at that and you put it against any of the other state average comparisons, you can see that our ratio is actually pretty high. I do not know exactly where this lands against regional schools. We did not dig that deeply into it. But the reality is if you take even the highest of 156.4, we are well above that, but you know, over 20 students per management position above that in our own ratio. If we move forward to the next slide, you can see we're now going into pupil staffing ratios. And this is all professional employees. So a lot of times when people think about this, they think of only classroom teachers who, you know, work with anywhere from 18 to 25 or 26 kids at a time. But the reality is these numbers actually take into account all full-time professional positions that are covered under the collective bargaining agreement. So in Danville, that includes teachers, it includes counselors, librarians, specialists, and school psychologists. Anybody who is under that CBA counts into the pupil staffing ratios for PSBA's purposes because they provide some level of service to students, nurses as well. To the next slide, you see those same categories for the state average comparisons in terms of what they play out to. So district that compare, you know, the categories under which we fall, number of students, the state average is 13.7. If you look at aid ratio range, it's 12.6. If you look at community type, it's 13.6. On the bottom left, you'll see where we were at the beginning of this current school year that is about to come to a close. You know, I know teachers and students are now officially done, but fiscally, our fiscal year, it's not over yet. So the 22-23 school year, you can see that our ratio is actually 11.13. That is significantly below any of the other state average comparisons, regardless of which measure you would like to choose. We have had a lot of talk about, you know, really looking at our allocation of resources, a lot of discussion around our budget, and the biggest impact of the budget, as I mentioned, is certainly human resources, your personnel. We have also had a pretty strong outward commitment to not furlough and to not cut people. And so what we are doing here is making adjustments through attrition. When we have a resignation, when we have a retirement, as a reminder, we are looking at, can we provide a level of service that is good for kids without filling that vacant position. And what you see as a projection going forward into the 23-24, we have actually gone down in these calculations, we've gone down 8 professional positions. You see what impact 8 professional positions has actually had to our student to teacher ratio. 0.6. So we are projected to start next year at 11.73 pupils per professional staff member, which is still significantly below any of the categories that you would use in the state average comparisons, whether you want to compare us to like-sized schools in terms of sheer numbers, in terms of our aid ratio range, or in terms of our community type, we are still significantly below what those numbers would be. So I think it's important that as we have these discussions about positions, that we keep this in mind. And then, again, these are not recommendations, but it's important to note how other districts certainly allocate these resources. And I feel like we don't have like a magic number or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we are obviously being financially responsible to the taxpayers of the community while still providing an outstanding level of educational service to students. And sometimes that doesn't mean more resources in terms of people. It means a better investment in the people that you have. And so we have committed to that one, going way back to the curriculum budget from line items. One of the significant places where we actually raised the level of money in the budget was in professional development. So I think there is a strong commitment from us to make sure that administratively we are supporting teachers in the work that they do and making sure that they have the tools and resources to do that work well, because that's how we will see advancement, that's how we will see achievement, that's how we will see growth amongst our students. If you go to the next slide, actually we can go one more, because I kind of said that already. We can go down and break it down actually by building specific. So we can take a look at that as we move forward. At the primary school, you saw the ratio at the beginning of 22-23 versus 23-24. I also included average core classroom sizes for comparisons in this, because That is something, especially at the elementary level, a lot of people pay attention to and care very deeply about. So the impact to that, we want you to know what that impact would be. If you see the ratio of 9.99 versus 10.44, and then you see the average classroom sizes, there is a slight increase in specifically second grade and kindergarten. Of course, kindergarten, we do not yet know what those numbers will be. Should we see a significant bump there, we do have a reserve plan to make sure that at whatever grade level that bump occurs, in terms of student enrollment, that we would be able to provide another classroom when necessary. Statistically, it's not a significant impact. I certainly, room to room, depending upon circumstances, it can be. But one thing about the ratio at the primary school that is important to note is that the primary school is the only school in our district which is designated as a Title I school. And so we have allocation of a little over $500,000 a year that has to be used specifically at the primary school. So that does lower their numbers because we use that money to pay for about 3.5 positions worth of reading specialists specifically dedicated to title services at the primary school. If we can go to the next slide. You see Liberty Valley, and again, you see those ratios. Number of teachers, technically, we have reduced that building by 1.25 teachers, and the impact to the ratio is about 1.15%. Again, you'll see the average core classroom sizes in some cases actually go down in third and fourth grade, and that's because of the number of students who are currently enrolled in the grades below. And as we play that forward, we can actually see that those numbers decrease. At the middle school, you see the ratio, and here's where, honestly, most of the adjustments were made in terms of some people moving either into elementary positions and then there's a cascade down potentially for vacancies. Beginning of 22-23, the ratio was 11-1. And at the beginning of 23-24, that ratio will be 12.37-1, and really not much of an impact to average core classroom sizes. Both of those data sets are based on 8 sections. So you take the number of students within a grade level and you divide by 8. Doesn't mean that every class has that number in it, because you can't have 0.5% of a child in one classroom and 0.5% in another. It works itself out. But obviously not a drastic impact to the average core classroom sizes at the middle school level either. And finally, at the high school, the last building, the ratio was 12.13. With adjustments, that has gone to 12.71 to 1. So again, pretty much close to the same exact number of students. Of course, that asterisk there again takes into account, we don't know exactly how many ninth graders will go to VOTEC. But you see the number of teachers reduced slightly there, and the reason why you have funky numbers is because some staff members will be shared between different buildings where it makes sense to do so and efficiently use our human capital resources, i.e. our teachers' level of being able to provide services to our students. Can move on. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Nee.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. The next topic we're going to speak about tonight is the comprehensive and strategic planning process. So the state requires that districts complete a comprehensive plan every 3 years. This is Danville's comprehensive planning year, and our plan is due in October. So we have throughout the year been meeting with a committee of some board members, administrators, teachers, and community members to write that plan. The state has guidelines about creating the comprehensive plan, and we've met those. We review our data and come up with goals for the district. But in addition to that, this group worked diligently to take that work into the next level of what we'd call strategic planning, so we could have even more guidance about how we run the district for the next 3 years. So some more detail. So if you can go to the next slide. One of the things that we do in this process is we work on vision, mission, and portrait of a Danville area school district student. So when we're thinking about a vision for our district, we're thinking about sort of that future, like what gets up and what's that long-term goal for us and for our students. And so our committee came up with forging strong connections that nurture the whole student and empower them to reach their full potential. Then that takes us to our mission statement. When we're thinking about a mission statement, I often think about, what am I getting up to do every day? What's empowering me to do my job on a daily basis? Our purpose daily. So in partnership with families in the community, the Danville Area School District empowers students in a safe environment through relevant and engaging educational experiences that support academics, creativity, and character development. And then finally, we looked at a portrait of a Danville Area School District student. And using our theme of forging on, and you'll see that in our mental health task force report as well, a Danville Area School District student will forge on by demonstrating flexible and critical thinking, ownership, resiliency, good judgment, and empathy. So that's where this place starts, where we're saying, who do we want to be? What kind of students do we want to produce? Then we need to think about how to go ahead and do that. So you're going to see on the next slide that this is where we took the work beyond just what the state requires in comprehensive planning and moved into this place of strategic planning. So in our report that board members you have before you in a bound book, that's also will be available online and was shared with all staff today, you will see goals that are created in the following categories. So we wanted to say between 2023 and 2026, where do we want to be as a district in terms of academics, professional development, culture and safety, mental health, athletics and extracurriculars, internal communications and systems, external communications and public relations, finance, and facilities. So we want to have guidance with which we can make decisions, which all administrators can write goals, and so that we can be moving forward in one path as a district. If you go to the next slide, you will see that every one of these categories is divided into goals. So if you're looking in your book, you will see that every goal has very clear action steps that people will take to meet that goal. You will see a column called data and documentation, which represents what's that final product we will have to show us that we've met that action step, who is the person responsible for that, and what is our timeline for completion. So that strategic plan was shared with academic affairs at the May meeting, and we went kind of in depth on those specific goal areas. You do have it before you tonight. We will make this available on our website. What board members will do is this will appear as a voting item on the July agenda, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions between now and then. But really proud of the work that this group did. People met very regularly with a lot of feedback to put this into action. So really thankful for them. I know we've hit a lot of important topics tonight, so thank you for your patience. We're going to end with some of the amazing highlights that have happened here at the end of the school year. So we'll turn things over to Mr. Vitas to talk to us a little bit about the high school's end of year successes. Certainly, we had a wonderful graduation ceremony on Friday night, so congratulations to all of the graduates in the class of 2023.
Okay, so I will try not to miss anything. There was a lot of really neat. I mean, obviously every month there's a lot of good stuff going on. However, like I said, the end of the semester here was jam-packed full of some really great accomplishments, but also some really fun events for students. So if, Jeff, you could scroll down, there's a photo there from valediction I'll get to here in a second. So if you go to the next page. At the top there, Dr. Green actually was a guest speaker in our anatomy and physiology course with Mrs. Crane. So students were studying the heart, and so he went through and chatted with them about different aspects of the heart as they were studying, some things going on with EKGs and all kinds of other medical procedures. So it's really cool to see not only community members but board members in the classroom working alongside our students. So the next block there is our national Spanish exam. A lot of great highlights. You can see all the students that took that exam, which Mr. Keller and Mrs. Reichkub do a great job hosting those students taking that exam each year, and they always do phenomenal. And this year they did a great job as well. And so they placed in the top 5% in the nation, and that's competing against schools all across the United States. So it's a really great accomplishment for not only the students but also our staff as well. The next block there, Ava Ross kind of took it upon herself to volunteer. Mrs. Willoughby and her staff kind of collaborated with the DAC this year to host swimming lessons, and so those students went down to kind of get lessons from the folks at the DAC alongside our staff, but she volunteered her time to kind of go down and help. She's part of the swim team here, and she's a sophomore, and so we just congratulate her. And obviously, like I said, I like to highlight a lot of different things going on, so hopefully next year we'll have more swimming folks kind of go down and help with those lessons. So it's something that's kind of neat. Again, not only community, but pulling together the high school and the primary school students. Down at the bottom, I highlighted this in the previous month. We had students compete in the PA Media and Design Competition, which is basically the computer competition. There's lots of different areas that students can compete in. Mr. Breon, who's also our gifted teacher, does a phenomenal job with our students, and he led these 4 students to states as they competed. I ate lunch with them one day, and they just blew me away with all their different ideas and the projects that they created. And so it's really, like I said, those are photos of them there at the competition. They did a wonderful job, and most all of them placed high in that competition. Next, Wallops Island, which was again a phenomenal trip. And I know because I was there, but it's a really cool opportunity for our students, for them to learn about ecology and the different maritime forests, which if you want to know what that's about, I will explain it to you later. But lots of cool ecology experiments and different types of hands-on learning that they do on that trip. It's hands down just a phenomenal opportunity for students, and Mrs. Crane and Miss Morgan led the students to that trip, and they've done it in the past, and they took a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, and this was just another great opportunity for students to go. And again, if you notice at the bottom there, it says hands-on, feet wet learning, and I can attest to that. It's definitely a lot of fun activities that go on, but students learn an immense amount of information there. Next, valediction, over $185,000 was awarded to our students through scholarships from our community, which is just an awesome opportunity for all of our students to have the chance to win different awards, and they were highly decorated. So you can see the group of students there that received those awards that evening, and their names are listed below. Glamour Gals, which was led by Sarah Bonashali, which is one of our seniors. She was kind of led by our Mrs. Breon, which is one of our coaches and community members here, kind of gave her the idea for this, and she helped her, kind of advised her through the fall and over the winter break, and she was able to raise a $1,000 scholarship for Glamour Gals, which is a national organization, and so hopefully this will continue, which was a great opportunity for her. SPM had a fundraiser at the Danville Moose Lodge, which again they raised $3,400, which was a great opportunity for them to continue to raise money to host the different events and support the mental health of our students, not only in the high school but across the district as well. Down below is our Forge On. There's no article there, and I think the pictures just kind of express all the different things that went on. It was a new spring event that we did this year, just kind of hosting lots of different students and different events. Noticed that it was very similar to the Homecoming Carnival that we do, but this year we had some student challenges at the end, so that's what the the relay races and all the different things that are going on the right. So it was just cool. And that was, if you see like on the right, all the students on the track, that was over 80 students from 9th grade all the way to seniors that competed in different activities and relay races, and seniors won. They took the, I don't know what you want to call it, the cup this year, if you want to call it. But it was kind of a neat activity that we started this year. So it was cool. Two of our students, the McCormick sisters, Chloe and Brooke, they are qualifying for the National Rodeo, High School Rodeo competition, and that'll be in Gillette, Wyoming in July. Those students are part of our FFA and our ag program, and they do a phenomenal job, but they also have outside interests as well. Chloe's graduating. She'll be going to Arizona State to study veterinarian sciences, and then Brooke is a 10th grader, so she'll be back with us again next year, so that'll be awesome. Down at the bottom, or the next block there, our faculty and staff hosted a faculty and staff competition against students in lacrosse, and obviously the faculty lost terribly, but it was cool to see what that sport looks like actually on the field. Down at the bottom there, spring sports. Lots of different spring sports going on over the course of this spring season. The track and field boys won the state title, which was awesome and amazing, and a lot of individual awards as well. Same thing with girls. Track and a lot of girls competed individually there at states, and it was awesome. Our boys and girls lacrosse team both won district titles and competed at home, which was really cool. It was almost like back-to-back games on Friday and then Monday. And sadly, they lost on Monday, but definitely had a wonderful season in our baseball and softball as well, and tennis again did a phenomenal job. And then finally there, I added that photo there at the end, so this wasn't on the one that got sent out district-wide, but this was a photo of different graduation pictures. There's one there in the middle of the ceremony, and then across the outside was the faculty hosted a luncheon for students, and we had a little area to get photos, so it's just a lot of photos from our staff and students just in the building. So.
Thank you. Really exciting times at the high school at the end of the year. Mr. Snover will tell us a little bit about middle school happenings.
All right, I'll go relatively quickly here. Back in early May, in conjunction with our chorus concert, and I did talk a little bit about this at the last board meeting, we had an arts night. It included some of our Spanish projects as well as our artwork from art class. Our Spanish club and our art club helped Mrs. Bond and Mrs. Highstand do that. Mrs. Bond's here tonight. She made some really great smelling food. I didn't get to try any of it, but it smelled really well, or really great. And I know a lot of the students and families that came to the chorus concert got to experience some of the other cultural activities that our students are involved in. If we keep moving there, Jeff. Memorial Day every year for quite a few years now. I was involved with this when I was a social studies teacher at the middle school in conjunction with the Montour County Veterans Association, and thanks to Myers Busing, Wayne Myers Jr. They donate a bus. They take a group of 8th graders to quite a few of the Montour County cemeteries. They plant flags on the veterans markers there, and there are it's a really fun activity for the students. A lot of them, and I can remember when I was doing it, they would comment it's the best trip of the whole year for them, and it's really, it's a learning experience. They get to learn about the history of our local veterans and some of the conflicts that they were involved in. So it's a really interesting and great event, and thank you to Mr. Worley and Mrs. Ridinger for taking those students, and again to Myers Busing for donating a bus, as well as the Montour County Veterans for organizing that. Our 6th grade, one of the field trips that our students go on, this is a great educational experience. Miss Knoll went on both days. We split the group in half. And they go to the Environmental Science Center at Camp Victory, and they spend the entire day doing a whole variety of outside centers and activities. And again, it's a really fun day. The students get to get dirty and wet and play with worms and do all kinds of fun stuff. So a real fun day for them. So, and I'll kind of just hit the nuts and bolts of this. It's a really interesting article. It was written about kind of student growth through through the middle school from 6th to 8th grade. And this article really focused on the fact that this particular group of 8th grade students came into the middle school in kind of the height of COVID years. We were still doing outside lunches and, masking, and we were on some alternating day schedules for a while there. And they, highlighted how challenging it was just to be a normal student during those times, and how much they've grown over the 2 years, and how life has changed for the better dramatically in those last 2 years. And they were very pleased to be able to end their middle school career in 8th grade as just normal, regular middle school students. And, what I took away from this article was just how great that feels for a kid to just feel normal and be able to interact with each other, in a regular sort of way, and not with masks on, and not, not seeing some of your friends every day and under all those restrictions. So a very good article. Of course, every year we have our 5th grades come up and visit the middle school. This year we expanded it a little bit more. They got to eat lunch with us again, another thing that went away at COVID, and now we brought that back. So, the students stayed, and we added a 4th lunch into the middle school that day, and they got to experience the cafeteria and all the other aspects of the school. We had a club fair organized as well, and I think our 5th graders had a pretty good morning at the middle school that day. So just a number of different activities that are going on. Our Sea Perch Club took 18th out of 58 teams at the state competition. We had 2 students that submitted winning entries until the Radiant Peace Contest. Could continue on there. We had our top scoring 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students attended a winner's banquet for the stock market game at Susquehanna University. And that's another really fun, interesting activity, very good learning experience for students. And then we had a number of students participate in the 24 math competition. Our Kindness and Art Club teamed up with the high school SPM Club to paint downtown windows in time for the Spring Fling earlier this spring. And we had a number of students compete with the PMEA District 8 Middle School Band Fest at Bucknell University, and they got to compete with a whole host of other talented musicians from the region. And that wraps up, of course, to echo what Mr. Varhalik just said. We also had a great spring sports season. Very proud of all of our athletes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snover.
Good evening, and I will try to honor Mrs. Heater's request to keep things moving along here. But what's interesting with our newsletter this month, this summer, is it's also 7 pages. So there are a lot of things, a lot of busy things going on. So I just want to quickly highlight basically three bullets throughout here, and that's on pages 1 and 3. We have our Connect STEM and 24 tournament teams, along with our Forge and Fire award winners. They are all recognized there. So we're so proud of our students for competing very well against some local and state competition. On page 3, we have our 4th graders. They participated in the Mulching Mayhem event. It used to be called Cinco de Mulcho, I believe, but they changed it to the mulching event. So we have 2 courtyards in our school. And yeah, one more page, Mr. Ryan. There it is. We have 2 courtyards, and the one in between 3rd and 4th grade. It's really 4th grade has taken ownership of that over the years, and they just do an amazing job weeding and having a fun event that way and keeping things really nice. 3rd graders and 4th graders can look out over that courtyard. And on page 4, next page, our 5th graders each year do a math mall where they essentially come up with a product. They sell that to their other 5th grade students. Also, teachers, faculty, and staff members can also participate in it. And we're proud to say that they raised over $2,000 for the local Ronald McDonald House. So great numbers, great donations from our 5th graders with selling their items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gump.
Okay, at the primary school, we had a very exciting event that, thank goodness, Bobby entertains. But we had the 2nd graders and the graduates walk together in kind of a final farewell and celebration to both individual groups. So what happens is the 2nd graders come down and they process through all of their friends and other grade levels, and it's wonderful. The band is up here playing music, and then of course the seniors follow. Oh yes, and then we had our kindergarten screenings. Gianna Earp actually had this wonderful idea to have this little setup for our incoming kindergartners as kind of a keepsake to parents. So we had some pictures of our incoming kindergartners taken, and it was a very successful event, as it is every year. Some special awards were then handed out, again with our 2nd graders, receiving special awards from their teachers, just really recognizing their unique characteristics. And it's again, a great time to celebrate the 2nd grade students. And of course, the seniors were there for a photo op. Piper, in 2nd grade again, I feel like this is very 2nd grade heavy, participated in the Bright Ideas Energy poster contest, and she won pizza and ice cream for her class. So they were very excited. And then at DPS, there's always a ton of end-of-year activities. Mrs. Seidel, who is retiring and will be dearly missed, always hosts field day. So students, I think I hear this is the best day ever, constantly all day long. So her hard work is very much appreciated. And then of course our home and school hosts the fun run, which again, students love. And we just highlighted some of our retirements, Mrs. Raup in 2nd grade, Mrs. Seidel, and Mrs. Roberts. And then of course our Iron Kids for the month were also recognized.
Thank you, Mrs. Willoughby. And then finally, Mrs. Marshall. And that's just the next screen, Mr. Ryan. Thank you.
Just in Head Start, today was our last day of school, so we had a award ceremony. Each child got a little award. Parents came. We had probably 90% of our parents attend today. It was supposed to be outside with inflatables, and we had to move it inside. But it still was amazing. We had community agencies come, and they had a lot of giveaways and just a lot of information. We were also lucky to be awarded a grant through the Perry County Council of the Arts and Exchange for a 7-day artist in residency program with Mary Kanish. The kids love to play drums. They make instruments and take them home to their parents, which is so exciting. The parents love that. And then also we have a water study, and so the kids got to have a water day, and who doesn't love that, right? And then just outside, just gross motor, playing obstacle courses, just having a good time. We are having a summer program for 2 weeks starting June 19th. We invited kids that are going to kindergarten just to give them an extra 2 weeks. We are providing transportation, so we're excited to get that too.
Thank you, administrators. The last couple months of school provide an opportunity for a lot of activities and keep us very busy. So thank you for your leadership. And that is the end of our superintendent report. Thank you.
Thank you. Summary, it sounds like we had a great year, K through 12. That's great. We have a public comment section now, 4.1 on agenda items only. Is there anyone that would like to speak on agenda items only? We'll have another public comment at the end. It is more open. Okay, we're going to move forward with the agenda. Next, we have a mental health task force presentation.
You're going to need a microphone so that people at home can hear you.
Thanks very much for allowing us to present. Mentioned for the Mental Health Committee, Sandy Green and Sam Faulkner on that committee. Are we doing okay?
That's better. Thanks.
Good. Sorry. We spent about an hour and a half talking about all the details of the Mental Health Task Force with lots of enthusiasm. 5 people presented. Today we're going to give the shortened version of that and just give some key highlights. But just like the students who promote mental health that Megan Geis has led this year, who identify mental health as a concern, Mental Health Committee and the whole board has identified this as an important thing to discuss, and so we'd like to thank the school board for initiating this back in November and December. Here are some straightforward facts that I want to highlight that emphasize why mental health concerns are so important, and that they deserve a priority in our district. All of us are affected by mental health problems in the sense that sometime in our life we have some mental health difficulties with a sad mood or anxiety or worry or relationship difficulties, and if we don't, at least some of our family members do. So all of us are affected by this. 20% of children and adolescents, 1 out of 5 kids, have an identifiable or diagnosable mental health condition. And we also know that even though we have treatments that are effective and helpful for many of those students, only about 50% of them get any service at all. So we have a whole lot of our children and youth in this country and in this school district who have mental health problems who don't receive adequate care. So that's a big fact that kind of justifies our whole effort. Mental health problems are best thought of as being on a continuum from regular problems in living, life stresses, sad mood, worry too much, relationship difficulties, all the way up to serious mental illness and profound abuse and neglect. But many of us are affected along that continuum. Mental health problems are the leading cause of bad or low academic achievement and bad life outcomes. I saw a study, major study in this country in Great Britain that said mental health problems lead to serious academic underachievement and difficulties in life adjustments. So the facts are compelling about that. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents from age 14 to 18. And this district has had kids attempt suicide and have had some students with successful suicides. So obviously that deserves our attention. Substance abuse is a problem. The statewide survey data that the school district is aware of indicates that lots of our students have used drugs and alcohol. And why does that matter? It matters for at least 2 reasons. One is adolescence is a time in which our students' brains are developing, and use of drugs and alcohol can impair that brain development. And the second compelling fact about substance abuse is that the earlier somebody starts using drugs and alcohol, the more likely they will have a lifetime problem with addiction. So helping our students not use drugs and alcohol is certainly a worthy and important kind of goal. But most important for the school board to pay attention to is mental health problems interfere with learning. And if our primary goal is to educate our students, we must pay attention to mental health problems. And another kind of important observation or conclusion that the the task force came up with is that we do and will continue to collaborate with our community partners, Geisinger Behavioral Health, CMSU's Public Mental Health System, CSIU, private practitioners, primary care providers, but they can't take care of all the mental health needs of our students, so the school district needs to be an active participant in trying to address these concerns. Our charge that came from you and the school administration was to review broadly the mental health concerns of our students. What are the kinds of problems they're dealing with? What are the challenges? What kind of strategies or solutions could we come up with to address those concerns? What are the evidence-based treatments or approaches for mental health problems? And to come up with practical recommendations. And so that was our charge, and that's what we tried to do. Could I have the next slide? So we formed this task force, and our first meeting was in December. Over 40 people came to that first meeting, and frankly, it was kind of a free-for-all with a whole bunch of discussion, and at the end of the meeting, feeling kind of overwhelmed with where are we going to go with this? And so we structured it and formed 6 work groups, and these were our 6 work groups. And from January on, these work groups, smaller groups, picked each of these topics to work on. And those of you who are familiar with the tier system, tier 1 is interventions for everybody. Is there anything we can do to address the mental health needs of all students? Tier 2 was kids who are identified with having mental health problems. How do we help them or address them within the school? When do we need services that are more extensive or outside the system? Obviously, the issue about crisis management, suicide risk assessment, suicide management, threats of harm to other students needs to be addressed. Communications was a major group. And how do we communicate, especially with parents, but with our students, with our families, and keep our community well informed about mental health issues? And the last group was substance abuse. If you had been at the hour-long presentation with the Mental Health Task Force, you would have heard some testimonials by several of the presenters. Teachers who had experience with students who had mental health problems, who got support and advocacy, and who had stories that turned out well. And that's why we're in this business, to help students. I'm not going to give you a testimonial about helping students, but that's the core of what this task force was about. But I want to share with you some of the observations I had from the members of the task force who are here. And one of the members, Megan Bond, said that during the process of coming to several of the task force meetings, she met a whole bunch of other people, developed some contacts and friendships, and she had a student during the process who needed some advocacy. And she was very happy to report that because of the friendships and contacts she made, she could more successfully help that student. And it was a very genuine, moving kind of statement that reflects the value of a large community of folks getting together. There were 41 members of this group, parents, teachers, community members, administrators who were very committed to this work. One of the other members said, "I've never been as encouraged and enthused about the Danville School District as I have been participating in this mental health task force." And another parent said, this is a very good process and outcome because we're doing the right things for students, and that's what we ought to be doing every day. So I have a great deal of respect for this task force, many of whom are sitting in this group today, and I want to thank them for their hard work with this. Let's talk about some of the outcomes. So the process was important, but the outcome also was important. I strongly encourage board members to read the whole report. We tried to do it as presented in a way that was kind of manageable and user-friendly and not just a bunch of facts. But please read the report. Many of the recommendations have already been initiated and are underway. Some of those will occur and get implemented in the next year. Let me give you just a couple highlights. I'm not going to list all 41 of those, of course, but here are a couple highlights. You may not be aware, there's something called the Student Assistance Program and a child study team, and they were basically two parallel kind of meetings. And I observed some of those and said, let's be more efficient, combine the two meetings so we can be advocate for students with mental health needs in a more practical and meaningful way. And Dr. Kalber is charged with trying to make that combination work well next year. Many of you are aware of the impacts of social media on our kids. We had a good, healthy, long discussion. There's some pluses and minuses about social media, but one of the things we came up with is we have some concerns about cell phone use in schools, and we want to challenge the administration and the school board to review and consider some revisions to the cell phone policy. We're going to expand substance abuse education and prevention. 4 of our staff, and Dr. Need mentioned this, but 4 of our staff will be trained this summer in suicide prevention, and it's kind of a train the trainer. They'll learn this program for suicide prevention, and then next school year train all of the staff so that they are more responsive to suicide needs. And one of the other things that we're very excited about, and there was lots of energy too, and that is we're in the process of developing resources for parents that will be available on the web page. Things like, what do you do if your child worries too much? What do you do if your child may have symptoms of ADHD? How do you evaluate that? How can we help why should kids sleep on a regular pattern, and how can I get my kids to sleep better? Things that all parents at some point in time may be interested in, very practical and kind of information available on our website. A couple other things I want to say. The good news is most of these 41 recommendations can be implemented without any extra expense. That is, they can be incorporated to the work of all these fine teachers and administrators and the good work they're doing. We've made recommendations to expand the mental health staff, to get some licensed mental health providers, and that would result in a need for some money, and so we're looking for ways to get donations or write grants to support that. So I want to thank the school board for the opportunity to be part of this task force, and especially thank all of you who were part of the task force, committed themselves, and doing this important work. Happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from anyone on the board? Really appreciate all the time that everyone has put into this and all the energy you put into it. Really stimulating that we're seeing this coming to the board and the scope that it is, and I want to make it a working document. Any comments from anybody that was a part of the task force? Dr. Green, Dr. Faulkner, anything you want to add? Are we okay to move on?
So I just want to say thank you to the group of people that actively participated that are actually here. And I would want to say thank you to the huge number of community members who took an interest and participated, who had no stake in it other than either they had kids in the district or cared about the outcomes. And I want to acknowledge SPM because a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened without them, without the students actually taking the lead and sort of, you know, driving the district to pay more attention to the issues. And I think Marty Factor did all the work putting this together. So I just want to acknowledge that she put a professional grade document together out of the recommendations for free for the district, which is great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Dr. Faulkner, do you have anything?
Yeah, just having been a part of that group and had played just a small role in some of the committee meetings, it was just incredible to see people from all different walks of life showing up to support something that, for me personally, is near and dear to my heart. And also that it has already led to concrete action steps. It is not, you know, a lot of the conversation I think is justified when you think about the history and the past. This is a flash in the pan, or this is, you know, is the district doing this to check a box saying, you know, we are to check the box, but we're already proving, I think the administration and the task force are proving that that's not the case. There's concrete action steps that are taking place, and I think from my perception at least, it's just getting started, and it's such an important thing for the district and the community. So just so pleased with the task force and everybody who was involved for stepping up to the plate.
I will put it out there, the mental health committee will continue to meet. We'll probably meet quarterly, and it'll probably be tagged on at the end of academic affairs because there's a lot of overlap between the mental health stuff and the academic affairs issues. And so, but it won't meet quite as frequently as some of the other committees to give the district time to implement stuff and see how those things go and what the ongoing needs are.
I would certainly like to thank Dr. Kettlewell for his leadership on the task force and all of the members of the community and the district that took part of this. Over the last 6 months, people have literally put in hours of their time. We had 6 subgroups. I mean, this was like a passion project for individuals. And the plan that you see in front of you is extremely comprehensive. I feel really proud that we won't just say as a district that we care about students' mental health, but we have clear action steps that we're going to take, some of which we've already taken or are in the process of developing for next school year. So things all the way from Tier 1 initiatives that all students will get in the classroom to ways that will support students in need, to preventative actions, to ways that will support parents. So I would encourage you to read the plan. I'm really proud of the committee's work. It was a joy to be a part of. It will be shared on our website so all community members can see that. We are working on an updated website right now that will be released before the start of the school year, and mental health will be the main sort of menu item, if you will, with the task force report being visible there, but also these resources for parents that the task force recommended we make available will be available on the website.
Okay. Thank you. We'll look forward to periodic updates and reports and any action items that would come before us that our administration would put out to us. Thank you. We're going to move forward with the other voting items that we have. 6.2, the payment application number 11, GR Noto Electrical Construction Incorporated. The board will take action to approve payment of payment application number 11 in the amount of $1,372 to GR Noto Electrical Construction Incorporated for Liberty Valley and primary school construction projects as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
I'm sorry, I see. Okay. All right. Strike that. 6.1, my fault. 6.1, payment app number 10. The board will take action to approve payment of pay app number 10 in the amount of $2,153.06 to GR Noto Electrical Construction Incorporated for Liberty Valley and primary school construction projects as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Comments, questions? Terry?
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.2, pay app number 11, GR Noto Electrical Construction Incorporated. The board will take action to approve payment of pay app number 11 in the amount of $1372 to GR Noto Electrical Construction Incorporated for Liberty Valley and primary school construction projects as presented. A motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Terry?
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.3, Myco Mechanical, the board will take action to approve payment of pay app number 12 in the amount of $1,928.23 to Myco Mechanical Incorporated for the Liberty Valley and Primary School construction projects as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Got a motion? Second.
I'll second.
Questions or comments? Nothing? Go ahead. Terry.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.4, payment app number 8 to Bognet. The board will take action to approve payment of payment application number 8 in the amount of $16,487.54 to Bognet Incorporated for Liberty Valley and Primary School construction projects as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Got it. Second.
Second.
Second. Questions or comments? Terry?
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Pay app 6.5, payment application number 9 to Bognet. The board will take action to approve payment of payment application number 9. Final payment in the amount of $12,817.76 to Bognet Incorporated for Liberty Valley and Primary School construction projects as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Questions or comments? Terry, go ahead.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Is that the final payment for the entire project? Or the final one to Bognet? Are we done? Do we know with the Liberty Valley project? It's closed out? Everything's closed out, punch list? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. George. Appreciate it. 6.6, preventative maintenance contract proposal. The board will take action to approve the preventative maintenance contract proposal from the McClure Company in the amount of $39,681 as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Questions or comments on this? Anyone? Okay. Terry?
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
I'm going to abstain. I do some consulting for a company that competes with them, so if I could get a form and I'll fill it out then. Okay. Danville Middle School drama performance. Number 7.1, the board will take action to approve Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for the 2024 middle school spring play. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Okay. Any questions or comments on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? That has been appropriately reviewed, I assume. All right. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Terry?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yep.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 8.1, Danville student to attend Central Columbia 339 program. The board will take action to approve Danville student number 110396 to attend the Central Columbia 339 program, Rehabilitation Aid 51.2604, beginning the 2023-2024 school year. Danville Area School District will be paying tuition to Central Columbia School District. Motion to approve. Excuse me.
I motion.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Anybody? I'm going to direct something to, I think, Mr. Moser, maybe Dr. Need. Are there any continued challenges to this out there, the 339 and the payment? I know that came up when Mr. Mathias was here. Is that all finished?
Continued challenges in terms
To
of,
the moving from district to district under 339 and the payments. There was one at one point.
yeah, when we review, obviously, challenges in terms of if it's for athletic purposes,
Right.
those types of things, we do review that.
And we're accepting students on 339.
We are accepting students
Okay.
from 339 as well, yes.
All right, good enough. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we can move on.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.1, you have the May 2023 finance reports, the cash receipts, the bills for payment. 10.2, 10.3, the bills we need to vote on. The board will take action to approve the bills for payment from or for May 4th, 2023 through June 6th, 2023 as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Richard, second.
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Heater. Questions, comments, discussion? Terry?
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 2023-24 finalized budget. The board will take action to approve the finalized budget for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions or comments about the budget? We saw a fairly detailed, some fairly detailed presentations over several months. Anybody before we vote?
One thing I would like to add, last month, it was questioned as to whether or not the real estate transfer tax had been in the initial, in the 22-23 budget. And I answered no, and in actuality, it was. It was buried, however, on the overall summary, they had all areas of that particular source of revenue under one coded number.
Okay.
And so I just want that out there that was actually part of the 22-23 budget.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before we vote? We have a motion, we had a second, correct? Terry, you're up.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10 points, thank you to everyone who was involved in the development of this year's budget. I know you put a lot of time into it, and we really appreciate Mr. Moser stepping in, Dr. Need stepping in, Mr. Sokolowski at the end of this, the Budget Committee, and everyone throughout the district. It's something that's taken some time and came to a successful fruition, I believe. 2022-23 year-end budget transfers, 10.7. The board will take at.
10.5.
Oh, I missed the Homestead Farmstead.
And
Oh,
general
we're
fund.
here. All right, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm
We
off,
got a lot
okay.
to do.
Yeah, it's a long agenda. 10.5, the board will take action to approve the 23-24 general tax fund resolution as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Dr.
Second.
Green and Mr. Reichard. Questions or comments on this? This is normal procedure, Mr. Sokolowski. Okay. Any questions, comments on this? Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.6, 2023-24 Homestead Farmstead Resolution. The board will take action to approve the 2023-2024 Homestead/Farmstead Exclusion Resolution as presented. Get a motion to approve.
Motion.
Mr. Reichard.
Second.
Mr. Vognetz. Questions or comments? Terry, go ahead.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 2022-2023 year-end budget transfers. 10.7, the board will take action to approve the business office to make the necessary budget transfers required to close the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Motion.
Got a motion to approve, second.
I'll second.
Peter, any questions or comments? we have any idea about how many budget transfers we're gonna need to make, or don't we know that yet? You'll have to have some time to look into it. Okay. Terry, go ahead.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 2023-24 tuition rates is number 10.8. The board will take action to approve the 2023-2024 tuition rates as follows. Elementary, $12,116.98, and secondary, $12,993.33, based on state formula, prior year financials, and adjusted at the end of the school term. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Second. Any questions or comments? There's really nothing we can do about this. This is set by the state. Okay?
Sorry, who was
Anybody?
second?
So, go ahead, Terry.
Who was second? I'm sorry.
I was.
Mr. Roberts. Go ahead, Terry.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.9, revised Pitney Bowes lease agreement. The board will take action to approve the revised Pitney Bowes lease agreement at a monthly rate of $374.03 for 60 months for the Send Pro Mail Center as presented. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Dr. Green.
Second.
Yeah, we got a second, Mr. Reichard. Questions or comments on this? Okay. Go ahead, Terry.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.10, 2023-2024 meal prices and a la carte prices. Excuse me, the board will take action to approve the meal prices and a la carte prices for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions or comments? Any significant changes in the prices that we should be aware of? Okay, we're still contracting this out with Mets, correct? Correct. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're ready to vote.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.1, personnel consent items. There are many. Board will take action to approve personnel items 11.2, 11.3, 11.4. Are these consecutive?
Yes,
Can
all
I
the way
just
to
say?
11:19.
Okay,
or
11.2 to
11:18.
11.18, so I don't have to read through all of them. Please take a look if you have not done so already and determine if you'd like any of these removed so that we can vote on them separately. And after you've had sufficient time to review, we'll accept the motion. Anything you would like removed from 11.2 up through 11.18? Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
I second.
Is there anyone that's not ready to move forward with these? We won't until everybody's good to go. Okay, are there any comments or questions about anything? This collective motion.
I would just make a comment that in there we're accepting the retirement of Ron Kanaski as the golf coach, and just would like to honor the over 40 years of coaching that Ron Kanaski has given to the district, his work as athletic director, and still visible at most of the sporting events in the Danville area community. So just really thankful for all of the work that Mr. Kanaski has given to the Danville area school district.
Thank you for that. Yeah, at one point, I think Mr. Kanaski was the leading wrestling coach in wins in the state of Pennsylvania, first or second for a while, and he just took on golf, and he's had tremendous success there as well. So, yeah, he'll be greatly missed. in that role. Any other comments? Terry, I think we're ready to vote.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.19, adding the elementary and secondary intervention and special education principals. The board will take action to add an elementary and a secondary intervention and special education principal position to the district with job descriptions as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Vognetz, Ms. Cooper. Questions, comments, and discussion on this change? Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.20, eliminate position. The board will take action to eliminate the position of Director of Special Education. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Vognetz, Mrs. Cooper. Questions or comments on the elimination of the position?
I would just certainly want to assure the community that special education services will be covered in the positions that were just added and actually an extended fashion. So we'll be providing great services for our special education students, a renaming here and an addition of services.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments or questions? Terry?
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.21, the board will take action to approve the transfer of Alyssa Wenrick from Director of Special Education to Elementary Intervention and Special Education Principal effective July 1st, 2023. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Comments or questions? Terry?
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.22, transfer. The board will take action to approve the transfer of Amy Willoughby from elementary school principal to secondary intervention and special education principal effective July 1st, 2023. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Vognetz and, wait a second.
Ms. Cooper?
Ms. Cooper, was it? Okay. Questions or comments? Terry?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.23, job description, administrative assistant to the intervention and special education principals. The board will take action to approve the job description for administrative assistant to the intervention and special education principals as presented. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Peter's the second. Mr. Cooper, or Mrs. Cooper. Any questions or comments on this change in job descriptions?
So this is a position that currently exists as the administrative assistant to the Director of Special Education. So looking at a name change here and some additional responsibilities working for both Alyssa and Amy in this role, but not a new job creation.
Any other comments or questions? Terry?
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.24, Safe to Say Something Coordinator. The board will take action to appoint Amy Willoughby as Safe to Say Something Coordinator effective July 1st, 2023.
Make a motion.
Reichert?
Second.
Got it, Terry? Okay.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.25, Police Officer Contract. The board will take action to approve the police officer contract between Danville Area School District and LaRue Bryan for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
Motion.
Got a motion
Second.
to approve and a second from Mr. Reichert. Initial was from Mrs. Cooper. Any questions or comments on this contract?
Is this the pre-existing or is this the additional one from?
No,
the-
this
This
is
is the,
pre-existing.
this is the one that exists
Pre-existing,
already,
okay.
yeah. Any other comments or questions? Terry, you're up.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.26, police officer contract. The board will take action to approve the police officer contract between the Danville Area School District and Matthew Hunter for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. This is also an existing contract, correct? Okay. Motion?
Motion.
Mr. Reichard, second,
Second.
Ms. Cooper. Questions or comments on this? Terry, you're up.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.27, support staff contract. The board will take action to approve the Danville Area Support Staff Contract effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2028. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Mr. Vognetz.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Cooper. Questions or comments? And I'm going to ask Dr. Green, I guess before questions and comments. Quick summary, if you could.
So I just want to give the support staff negotiation team some kudos. Sabrina did a good job of rallying a bunch of disparate interests into a single contract. I think this will do a fair bit to advance our ability to hire support staff, which is critical for the teachers to be able to teach. And it certainly makes our para contracts more competitive than they had been previously. And it does some things with healthcare that'll be good for the support staff as well. So I think it's a net win for everyone. You know, we always wish we could do more, but the pot of money isn't infinite. But we've done our best to treat everyone fairly and treat all our stakeholders fairly. So the kids, the taxpayers, the staff. So I think this is relatively fair to all the stakeholders in this group. And I really did appreciate having, you know, people on the other side who are willing to actively discuss the issues in a non-adversarial fashion, much like the teacher contract.
Thank you again, Dr. Green. Really appreciate everything you've done, the committee, and the support staff, in getting this to the point where we can vote on it tonight. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any other questions or comments on the support staff contract that's in front of us for a vote? Terry?
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Thanks again. 11.28, resignation. The board will take action to accept the resignation of Jeremy Wynn and to authorize the execution of any and all necessary documentation to effectuate the same. Motion
Motion.
and a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have Mrs. Cooper and Mrs. Heater. Any questions or comments, discussion? Terry?
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
If I might, Mr.
Yeah.
Burkhart, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge Mr. Varholic and the work that he's done to lead the high school over the last month. A lot happens at a high school at the end of the year, and just really thankful for his leadership in a position where we usually have two administrators in that role. He's really stepped up to the plate and led at the high school really well. So thank you very much, Mr. Varholic.
Okay. We haven't had a brief potential addition to the agenda. The Danville Area High School Assistant Principal for additional duties assumed. Someone make a motion to that effect.
I so motion.
Second.
Second from,
She said it. I would have said it, but she said it.
motion, we had a second, and we need to open this to public comment.
comment, yes.
On this portion of the agenda. So we will open up the agenda at this point and the public comment portion so that anyone that wants to talk about this can do so. If not, we'll vote on the amendment to the agenda. Ready? There you go. Thank you, okay.
I just want to say, I think that's the reason the board has decided to do this, is I think the board thought it was important for us to acknowledge people who go above and beyond what the normal call of duty is. And as part of changing the culture in the district itself, I think acknowledging that and recognizing it is important. And I think the board will agree with me that they recognize that as sort of the new cultural direction that we want to set in the district. And you are definitely appreciated.
Any other comments or questions about changing the agenda and adding this? Okay, we're going to vote on this. This is not on the stipend itself, it's on changing the agenda.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes?
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
And, yeah, then we would vote on the actual.
A motion, we need a motion to approve a one-time stipend payment of $5,000 to Danville Area High School System. Robert Mahalik, assumed through May 2023 through June. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay, again, public comment on this item. Mr. Roddy, anything? Okay. All right, I think we're ready to vote. Nothing from the board? Go ahead.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes?
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Got it, okay. Mr. Mahalik, thank you. We appreciate the efforts over the last month or so. 11.29, sorry, Assistant Superintendent salary increase. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve a salary increase for the Assistant Superintendent effective July 1st, 2023, as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Questions or comments? Ready to vote, Terry?
Dr. Green.
Yes?
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.30, District Accountant, Human Resources Coordinator salary increase. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve a salary increase for the District Accountant / Human Resources Coordinator effective July 1st, 2023, as presented. Motion?
Motion?
Second?
I'll
Motion
second.
to second. Any questions or comments? This is in conjunction with, he's in a separate contract, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Got it. And so is Mr. Moser,
Yes,
obviously.
that's why they're their own items.
Got it.
They have their individual contracts.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just acknowledge how helpful he was when we didn't have a financial person in district in the 2 negotiations that we just went through. And he did an extraordinary job, and I think it's important to publicly acknowledge that. I don't think the negotiations would have been possible without the data that he supplied me.
I agree.
Okay. Got a motion in a second? Okay. Go ahead.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes?
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.31, Act 93, salary increases. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve salary increases for the Act 93 administrators effective July 1st, 2023, as presented. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second. Mr. Reichert, thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, Terry?
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes?
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.32, non-bargaining unit hourly employee salary increases. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the salary increases for the non-bargaining unit hourly employees effective July 1st, 2023, as presented. Motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
Dr. Green, Mr. Reichert, questions or comments? Terry?
Can I just,
Oh,
so,
yeah,
so the public knows the next two items, there are certain employees that don't fall under the union. And so when we renegotiate contracts with either the support staff or the teachers, they're not included in those contracts. And they do a lot of really important work in the district. And so this is making sure that they are acknowledged and that their pay continues to increase because they don't automatically increase with the union positions. So that's what the next two items are about.
Thank you.
Okay.
11.32, do we get a motion in a second?
We got it.
Did, okay, go ahead.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.33, non-bargaining unit salaried employee salary increases. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the salary increases for the non-bargaining unit salaried employees effective July 1st, 2023, as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Mr. Reichert, Mr. Vognitz. Questions or comments? Terry?
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. And that completes the salary portion of this. I just want to point out, we have not recognized the superintendent at this point because we kind of got pressed for time on your evaluation, and we may push this back a little bit till July, but I do very much appreciate your efforts, Mr. Moser, yours as well, and all the time and energy you've been putting into this. This is obviously a very busy district and kind of tough times in public ed, and you two have both taken on things, and we really appreciate your time and energy and passion for the positions and everything you brought to us, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 11.34, extracurricular advisors. The board will take action to approve the 2023-2024 extracurricular advisors list as presented. Motion,
A motion.
second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Questions or comments on the extracurricular list as presented? Nothing. Terry, go ahead. Oh,
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
yes. 11.35, the 2023 assistant fall coaches. The board will take action to approve the 2023 assistant fall coaches as presented. Motion,
Motion.
a second.
Second.
Any questions or comments about the fall coaching list? Terry?
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.36, head girls basketball coach. The board will take action to approve Matt Diltz as head girls basketball coach for the 2023 fall season with a stipend of $3,050. Step one.
Motion.
Second.
Questions or comments? Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Athletic director contract. Board will take action to approve the contract between Danville Area School District and Brian Albertson beginning July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025 as presented. So that'll be 2 years.
I motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this contract? Okay, Terry?
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
No.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. High school secretary, 11.38, the board will take action to approve the employment of Claire Beaver as a high school secretary at the contracted hourly rate effective June 13, 2023. The hourly rate will be adjusted in accordance with the Danville Area Support Staff contract upon board approval, which we now have. Motion to approve?
Motion.
Mr. Vognitz, and second, Mrs. Cooper. Questions or comments? Terry?
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.39, summer PE instructor. The board will take action to approve Chelsea Eck as summer PE instructor at the contractual rate. Motion
I motion.
and a second.
Second.
Mr. Reichard, any questions or comments on the summer PE appointment?
We just want to name that this is not credit recovery
Right.
like other summer school is, but this is an opportunity for students to earn credit in the summer, so that just opens up their schedule for additional courses. So just looking at it differently than traditional summer school.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And certainly we're just thankful to Mrs. Eck for the time and effort she put into planning for this new offering.
Sure. Okay. Terry?
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11:40, summer technology intern. The board will take action to approve the employment of Aristotle Rock as a paid summer technology student co-op at an hourly rate of $10. He will be working 32 hours a week from June 13th through August 18th, 2023. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Motion from Mrs. Heater, second. Mr. Reichard, any questions or comments on this? Barry, go ahead.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. All right, we have 12.1 policy and insurance consent items, 12.2 through 12.4. Please take a look. And if there's anything you'd like pulled out, let us know. Anybody have any issues with any of these being consent items? Bless you. Okay. Need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Ms. Cooper,
I'll second.
Mrs. Heater, questions or comments? Terry?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 12.5, property liability, inland marine crime, auto, umbrella, and workers' compensation insurance. Board will take action to approve the property liability, inland marine crime, auto, umbrella, and workers' compensation insurance through the Seltzer Group at a cost of $201,980 as presented. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Ms. Heater,
Second.
Mr. Reichard, questions or comments? Was this put out competitively as an RFP, or is this just a? Okay, this is just a.
Yeah, it's our
all right.
second year.
And what's the increase? Do we have any idea? Okay, I didn't see it. I'll let it. Okay, I was just curious. Okay, good enough. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Terry, go ahead.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Board concerns and items for next meeting agenda. Anything that you would like to bring up or anything you want to further delve into from the reports earlier? Anything, anybody? It's been a long night, but if you have anything, now's the time. We do meet in July, correct? I know some districts don't. I thought we did, okay. And we will finalize the evaluation at that point. Nothing? Public comment? No public comment? Have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
You want to post?
Lots of them.
We are adjourned.
Richard, run away.